street with your red lips and funky beat. You better hold your head up to the sky. I'm gonna roll.
Let's have a chat about
the
that.
day I die. My 1 billion trillion can hold up half the sky. Raise your hand if you're ready and willing. If you know it's time.
Hello and welcome back to Analysed, everybody. It's so lovely to have you and join me again today. Now today's is an unsolved. We're going to look at this. I think it's one that haunts me most, to tell you the truth. This is the disappearance of this 18-year-old young girl, Nicola Payne, from Coventry, and this happened in 1991. I suppose it's been over 30 years now when you think about it, hasn't it? And Nicola's family still doesn't have any clues, any idea. They have no answers at all into what happened to this young girl. The police still believe that there are people out there, I suppose, that know the truth, and without a doubt, of course they would, if they're still alive. It's such a strange one, this, I think, because when we look at, she was just 18, devoted, she had a young child, and I think she was coming from her boyfriend's house at the time, home to her child. We're looking at back in 1991, so yeah, she was just 18, she had a little boy, very young child at the time, and she was just full of life and planning for the future with her fiancé and everything else, had good parents, everything. She was just a lovely, everyday, normal girl, nothing out of the ordinary, you know. So I think because she was a devoted mother to this very young child, and she'd been to the boyfriend's and she was just walking home and never seen again, you can sort of rule out that she'd run away, right? They checked into that. You can rule that out. She took nothing with her, nothing's ever been seen of her before again. No, you know, nothing. Now these was the days before CCTV and all this sort of stuff. You know, 90s was just really as it was all sort of coming out. So there wasn't anything really. I think this was the days when people could go missing, and unless you had eyewitnesses, there wasn't really much to go on. So Nicola Payne, she was just 18 years old at the time of her, when she went missing. Devoted young mother of a 7-month-old baby boy. She was described as cheerful and caring and full of life. And on the 14th of December 1991, she set off on a short walk in Coventry that she had taken, that should have took her no more than 10 minutes. And it was sort of across a field. It wasn't a street. It was sort of across a field, but everyone used this field to cut across these two areas. And she never made it home. That was it. And this was at midday, 14th of December, very close to Christmas. So in England, as many of you know, even at 12 o'clock in the day, if it's a cold day, it can be misty, not dark, but, you know, some winter days are sunny, not so much in England, in December. But it could, you know, it was not dark, it was midday, but it could have been overcast and everything else. But still, someone should have seen something. So the timeline of that day that she vanished, so around midday, Nicola left her boyfriend Jason Cooke's house on Winston Avenue. Her plan was to simply walk to her parents in Wood End, which is just a short walk away, and I've got some sort of map stuff that I'll put up for you. So she needed to cross this area of waste ground near Coventry Canal, which cut through the locally, and it was locally known as Black Pad. So this area was locally known, well used, constantly well used. It was a cut through from two different areas, saved you walking all the way around, you cut across. No one actually knows if she made it even to that part, to tell you the correct truth. But it's near a canal, which is always a worry. But she was just gone. So witnesses recall seeing her walking along this path, but after that she vanished. Nicola never arrived to her parents' house, and her disappearance was quickly reported because it was understood that she had left this boyfriend's house, sort of starting to go on this path, and that was it. She was gone. So the investigation was massive, right? Search following police sources and all, you know, all around the waste ground and everything, and including any of the canals and stuff that were there. They dredged parts of the canal, and they went door to door, nearby estates and all this sort of stuff. They'd done everything that you would assume they would do. Still nothing. So you've got loads of police officers knocking on doors, everything else. No one, not one person, has seen anything. So I think right from the very start, because of her child was so young, because of her just literally leaving and going home with no other evidence that she had took herself off or done anything else to herself, they believed that this was then a possible abduction and murder. And really, I think that's probably what it was. So over the years, they have questioned people. I think they've questioned local men with history of this sort of stuff. In 2013, 2 men, both from Coventry, were charged with Nicola's abduction and murder after cold case review. But in 2015, after a lengthy trial in Birmingham Crown Court, both were acquitted due to lack of evidence. Now the problem is cold cases are great, and I love cold cases because they go over other evidence, they look at it from a new fresh light. But when you have someone missing like this, abduction, with no witnesses, no nothing else, no DNA, nothing, even today, if you can't find a body and you can't find any evidence, or they haven't stored any evidence, because at that time there was no evidence on this girl at all, it's literally like she vanished. It's very difficult then to prosecute people on circumstantial evidence. These days the law requires much higher level of evidence, and that lack of evidence is what finished this case. Now that's not saying that these two people could be innocent, or I'm not saying that these 2 people could be guilty. There is not enough evidence to prove that, so the case would have been dropped. So the police have continually stated from 1991, when she went missing, that she had been murdered. And I agree, really, because there is nothing at all. I think she was taken from the scene very, very quickly. Probably by 2 men or more, but it could be 1. And I've said this about other cases when we've looked at other cases where these people take the same routes home and stuff. The perpetrator is usually, if I'm looking at a cold case, which like they would have done, and I shall put some slides up to help you along with this, is that the victimology. She's a young girl walking on her own. Midday seems and makes the perpetrator very sure of himself, right? So you're abducting a person, a woman, who's got something to live for, right? So she would have tried to fight back her child, her life. This is midday. So the perpetrator must be very sure of himself, must have done it before, or must have been working with someone that could have got this girl very, very quickly, silenced her very, very quickly, to then probably get her in a car and take her off somewhere. Or, because I don't think anyone, when you start dragging a live woman across a pathway that takes you about 10 minutes to walk across, and she'd have been screaming and shouting at that point, if that was the case, they would have been noticed, someone would have noticed something, and no one did. So it's probably a good theory to say that there was probably more than one of them. They probably had a car, and it was probably planned. But these are people that has probably done this before. This is not your quick, one-off, random abduction, because the way it was done, the time it was done, and how it was done, where they've left no evidence at all. So I suppose the questions when we look at a cold case, and this is what these cold case detectives would have thought, Who would have had the confidence to abduct a young woman in broad daylight in the middle of Saturday lunchtime? Busy. Saturday lunchtime. Was she targeted by someone who knew her or her routine? These are the sort of things we look at. Or was it an opportunist attack? I don't think it's an opportunist attack. I don't. I think it was too well planned for that. When you have opportunist attack, things can go wrong, right? Nothing went wrong in this. Nothing went wrong at all. So did anyone else see a vehicle waiting nearby on that day, parked on that waste ground or the canal paths, right? Someone must know something. Or has someone in the community carried a dark secret for over 30 years? Because that's what it would have been. Someone must have known. They must know about, even be curiosity, someone said something who didn't think it was right, all this sort of stuff. And when we do these cold cases, we do talk about theories, right? Because that's all there are, because the girl's body's never been found. Her parents never saw her again. Her child was 7 months at the time. He's now in his 30s and didn't know his mother. The boyfriend was left. That's it, gone. It's over. These people have all been checked out, so we know it's nothing to do with them. This girl just vanished. How? Why? The when and the how. And that's what a cold case should be looking at. And I think these have done a great job on this. As I said, with no evidence as such, especially the weight of evidence now that you would need in these sort of prosecutions, unless you find that body, you haven't really got a chance. Or unless someone comes forward with information, and this is really what this case is about, really. Highlighting the case, also highlighting maybe some of you may have some empathy out there, maybe someone knows something, just didn't think they could say anything. 30 years down the line, loyalties change. It would be a good time to come forward now. So when you think about communities, and this was actually quite a small community, little parcels of it in the 90s. So people knew other people. People still had, not so much like today where we daren't talk to anyone because we don't know what you're going to say the right thing, or you just don't know. In 1991 in this country, things were different. People talked, people gossiped a lot more, people looked out their windows, people took notice of things. You always had your idiots around and your dregs of society, around, and some were harmless, some were not. Some were troublemakers, some were PDFs, because that's what I'm going to call them from now on. And some were violent in this community. So this gossip is what I think the police are after now, is what was the gossip of the day? What was really being said here in these communities? That really, the police, they weren't talking to the police, but amongst themselves. Who really, because people in the community do know, so who do the community think did it? And why? And how? That would be an interesting one. So if any of you from around Coventry, around this area, in that time, know of any gossip, just say it. Just say it, can't harm, can it? Can't harm anyone. But that's sort of what they're after now. As I said, because there's actually no physical evidence. Let's talk about Nicola's family now, right? So, I always say this, put yourself in the place of the person, of the family members of the victim. If you have a daughter that you've babysat for, this certificate midday, they popped out, they're popping back, but they never pop back. They never come back. You know then something's wrong. And 30 years goes on and you still don't know. So the fault of that is terrible for this family. To live with the not knowing. Even now, they know it would just be a body, they would, maybe justice if you can get it, but a body would be good, so they can put this girl to rest, where they can go and have somewhere to mourn. But they've not even been given that opportunity. And for over these years, they've fought to find more evidence and more evidence, and for someone to say something, and no one's come along. So when I do these cases, I really think of the family members, what I call the secondary victims in this, because for them, it is a lifelong sentence. The grieving never stops. The pain never stops. The searching never stops. The wondering in your mind of what could have happened will never stop. And that will also be for her son, who's had to live with this his whole life. So this is why I like to do cases that sometimes look so unachievable in an outcome. But it just takes one person with one fault, one memory, one bit of gossip that could break this case open. And if you don't do it for anything else, you should do it for the family. So I'm going to put some profile stuff up and on the slides and have a look, right? Because when I am looking at cold cases, this is what I use. I break it down. I do criminal profiles, victim profiles, geological profiles, everything, the when, the why, the how, the if, the what, you know, all this sort of stuff. That it's massive to get to a point where you think, in some cases, profiling is great, right? Because when you put all this together, but when you have someone that's disappeared so close to their home, in an area that's well used by a lot of people, you have probably a perpetrator or perpetrators that are from around that area or within at least a 5-mile radius of that area. I don't believe it's someone that's passing through. I believe it's someone that may have watched her, may have been watching that area, right? Maybe not her herself, but that area, because it was so well used by people that they would have took someone. So was she just unlucky that it was her that day? Or was she the target of that? It's hard to know. But the body, no, has never been found. And 30 years on, they have, as I said, they dredged the canals and parts of the canals and stuff. But if these people were driving, if this was well planned, this girl could have been driven out the area quite far away, quite quickly, but it still wouldn't have been that far if it was a local person that's done these crimes. It would be somewhere that they used as a dump ground, because these people or person have done this before. This is not a one-off for these people. She probably wasn't the first. She certainly probably wasn't the last. So it'd be interesting to see over time if something does come out about this case and what else this person or persons have done. But at the time of recording, which is now the 13th of October 2025, there is still no clue to what happened to this girl to this day. It's a really shocking case. So I think when we talk about missing people, who this girl was abducted and murdered without doubt. Like, she's not missing, she is murdered. These perpetrators are still out there and have been out there working around doing this sort of thing for the last 30 years. Now, they may have gone to prison, they may have been stooped a little bit in what they do by the latest technology and stuff, but when you know to get rid of a body to where no one's ever found that body, you understand, even in 1991, about evidence and hiding evidence, especially a body. So this is a sad case, this. But I wanted to highlight it because it's important that we still look at these old cases and try and bring something to them. So as again, if you were in Coventry around this time, and you know anything about this case, now would be a really good time for you to come forward. And that's even if you just had a chat with someone that you didn't think was right, you saw something that you never said, you've been told something and you've been told to keep quiet, and you did for fear or for anything else. It is now time. So you can ring West Midlands Police on 101 and talk for them. You can also contact Crime Stoppers anonymously on 0800 555 111. And it doesn't matter how big or small the information that you think you have, it could be the one bit of evidence that they need to break this case. So Nicola Payne, set out on a simple walk to see her family, and she never come home. So if anyone's out there, even if you can try and think to yourself, I need to do something here, I've kept quiet too long, you should do it. So more than 3 decades later, and her loved ones have still got nothing. 30 years of silence is too long, isn't it? For anyone, 30 years. You must be guilt-ridden if you know something about this case and haven't said it. It's time for someone to speak, because there is no other evidence. And just think what you can do for a family member if you actually come forward and do the right thing. That would be really great. So a quick bit on the criminal profile. When I do these sort of things, he's male, almost certainly male, or pair of males. Likely mid-age 20s to 40-year-old at the time in 1991. He probably would have been now in his 50s or 70s. Likely a local to Coventry. His family members or someone he knows, or close family ties around this black pad area, this race ground, he would have known it well. Knowledge of the area, and he would be confident enough to abduct, as I said, in broad daylight, and familiar with this area. Likely lived, worked, or regularly moved through this area, van driver, anything like that. Knew escape routes like fields, paths, or vehicle access around this place. He would be either an opportunist or a planned stalker. I think in this case it's a planned stalker. He could have spotted her and sort of just thought it's her, but it could have been anyone. I still think that. He's a high risk offender. That means that any time that you're abducted in the daylight, he likes the thrill of the abduction. He likes the thrill of the risk. He's a high risk taker. And that would be, you know, I think strong criminal, confident. He's a criminal with confidence, makes him hard to catch. He would have history of offending or impulsively linked to sexual or violent urges. So these are the sort of things you need to look at if you're thinking back on people in this area. This case was almost certainly a sexually motivated case. Concealment of the body strongly suggests his fear of discovery. He likes what he does, right? And forensic awareness, even in 1991. The complete disappearance, no body, no belongings, suggests that planning or post-crime organisation, knowing the disposal site, may also be in transport. So he always, and he still probably would use the same disposal site because this body's never been found. So if he's a serial offender like this, he would be using the same site. So his likely background, his previous history would be sexual offences, indecent exposure or violence. He may have patterns of approaching women, and so I would, if I was the police, I'd be looking way back, right, way back, from even a good 20-30 years back, to see the local, you know, people that like to show themselves off and any other little crimes that they think that this person could have been in. He was possibly employed with flexible hours and outdoor work, because he would have been quite strong if he was on his own. The post-crime behaviour would have made, he would have shown sudden nervousness after the disappearance. he would have moved away, disposed of a vehicle, cleaning a vehicle, something like that, probably changed his lifestyle a little bit, might have spoken about her death in detail, or totally avoided the situation. It depends what these killers are like. Potential alcohol and drug misuse in a way of coping with his guilt or stress, right? So he's probably a local man, 25 to 45 in 1991, with knowledge of this black pad waste ground, capable of brazen abduction in the daylight, suggesting confidence and prior offending, motivated by sexual interest and control, forensically curious, with possible transport or access to dispose of a body. Someone in the community may have suspected him before, either his odd behaviour or sudden changes after December 1991, or there should be long-standing rumours or gossip within this area. That's this case. So, thank you for joining me. Till the next time. Bye bye.